Okay. Hi, everybody. Just trying to catch my cue there of being told that we're on. So glad to be able to, I was going to say be with you, but, I guess we're kind of with you. My mom and my sister were supposed to be here with us live, but they're sick, or my mom's sick, so they couldn't come because nobody with bad germs can enter here, unfortunately. So anyway, we're just so happy to be able to do this and you to join us. It's such a great thing. I mean, technology, isn't it wonderful at times? But anyway, so the first thing I want to talk about is the elephant in the room. After watching last week's video, after I watched it back, the elephant in the room was me. And
Mother. Stop that.
I was like, oh my goodness. So today we're sitting behind the table, and with my lovely stained glass in the background. It's not real stained glass, but it is a neat thing that Janice Wallen, wallpaper extraordinaire and all around great person, did for me. So I like that. I hope you like that too. But anyway, I wanted to say that as far as the elephant in the room, that we, back in the beginning, trying to back up to our story and when all this started with the cancer. Back before I was diagnosed, most of my friends know that I was dealing with health problems for a couple of years, and they were pretty severe. And little did I know that they think that was the beginning of the cancer, was even back then, and all those other things I was dealing with was kind of just a side thing. But because it went on so long, I literally have no strength, no muscle tone, I am jello, and you could tell that when I was sitting on the couch last week. But when I went for my CAT scan of my stomach, before the diagnosis, I even sent a picture, I think I sent it to my daughters, that of sitting and the side view of my stomach, and it looked like I was more than 9 months pregnant. I don't know how long elephants are pregnant, but they're longer than 9 months, and that's what I look like. But I have since then had a few drainings, and I will continue to have drainings as long as the fluid continues to build back up. Which brings us to our update. See, you didn't think I was going to get there, but I did.
People are saying sound isn't very good.
The sound isn't very good? Yeah. So does that mean talk louder?
Maybe so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they said much better. Miss Trudy said much better.
Oh, okay. Okay, true that. Okay, so we, at that point that I had, before I had my first draining, I had been gaining like a pound a day, and at that point I was up like 50 pounds. And after my first draining, it was, I was down at that point 28 pounds, almost 30 pounds. So, little did I know that was what the weight gain was all about. So anyway, at my last appointment, the doctor, I go in and they check my counts to make sure that I am able to get the chemo. And at the last one, we went in and met with the doctor, and he said that my white blood cell counts were normal, that my baby white blood cell counts, and you medical people will know what the name of those are, but they're the cells that are trying to become full-grown white blood cells, that they were normal, that my hemoglobin was 11.1, which 12 is normal, right? He said. And that was up from the last time. And that was, but the 11.1, even though 12 is normal, 11.1 was still really good range to go ahead and have the chemo. So then he gave us the results of the CAT scan, and said that, okay, you might have to help me because, you know, my short-term memory is like getting really bad. But it said that, help me. What was I saying?
This tumor has decreased.
Oh, the tumor has decreased in size. It has shrunk. He didn't say how much, and they really don't know for sure because I don't know if you all remember, they weren't able to get markers back in the beginning because of all the fluid in my stomach. But as the cancer cells die and as the tumor shrinks, it will not produce, the fluid production will slow and hopefully go away. And the reason why that's important is because the fluid could actually carry cancer cells to other parts of my body. So we don't want the fluid, and we don't want the pregnant belly either. So that's really the most important thing. But anyway, and you know, definitely don't want any results. I did tell him that if I'm going to have a pregnant belly, that I want to birth this thing. Let's get it over with, you know. So we'll see. But okay, so what else in the updates?
Fluid has decreased in its production.
Right, the fluid has decreased in its production, so that is a thing that he was really excited about, the doctor, and that the tumor has shrunk. Oh, so that means my body is responding to the chemo. So we will continue to do chemo and check again, like, well, I'll have 4 more, or now 3 more, and they'll check again. And before they would go into immunotherapy. So that's kind of the update. Is there anything I'm missing? I have to say, every time I go, they want me to list any of the side effects or symptoms that I'm having from the chemo. And they go down a list and ask me all these questions. Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have pain? Do you have sickness? And I don't. They're amazed by that, and I know, and I am sure to always tell them that there's only one reason that I don't, and that is because of all the prayers of all the people, all my loves that pray for me. And you know, if there's one thing I have found out, it is that when I'm sitting in that room getting chemo with all of the people, the last time I went, there was not an empty chair. And when I'm sitting there, I know that I'm not the only one going through something difficult, either health-wise or even otherwise. And that you guys take a moment or some time to lift a prayer for me means the world to me. And I don't take that for granted. I greatly appreciate it. And I greatly covet your prayers. It just has meant everything. And so I hope that you know that, and that you know when you pray for anybody, you know, besides me, anybody else, that God is hearing and He is moving, and that your prayers are not just productive, but just there have been times I have been sitting there and I literally could feel, and that's hard to describe, but I could feel prayers. I could feel they were going on my behalf. And so thank you for that. I think that's the update. If anything else comes to mind, I'll just interrupt him and, you know, give it to you. So, Okay.
Thank you. That's it. We just want to say thank you. So many of you have just continuously reminded us that you're praying through text, messages, emails, phone calls, all kinds of ways. Things you've done. You've reminded us. We went to you in the beginning, and many of you remember we said, please pray specifically that she would qualify for the immunotherapy. And she qualified. Many of you. You went. So many all over the country, the world, have been praying. We got the news that she was qualified for immunotherapy, and that's not a simple thing, and most people don't. Then we prayed that, would she be able to handle the chemo? So far, her hair hasn't fallen out. She hasn't gotten sick. They said that she wouldn't be hardly be able to taste anything cold because it would make her tongue, or it would just be horrific. That hasn't happened. We're just grateful. Your prayers, I just want to encourage you and say thank you. Your prayers are working. God's listening and God's hearing. When I say working, you understand what I mean. But I believe God's responding to your prayers. And I just want to say thank you. It means so much to know that you really are praying, because you tell us you are, and we see what God's doing. And it just means so much to have people and friends like you that are, we just don't feel like we're alone. And that's important. We just don't feel that way. So just want to say thank you, and please keep on praying. We know that the journey is long, but we just feel like we have somebody. I have somebody with me, and I have the Lord with me. In the Scripture, one of the words they used in the Old Testament for the tribe as a nation of Israel, they walked through the wilderness. The tribe that was all the way in the back was called the re-reward. A really weird, old-timey word. It just means for the ones that are the back, behind everybody else, and they're the ones that are kind of keeping their eye on so nothing comes up behind you, and they're just supporting you and standing up for you, and you are that for us and so much more, and we really appreciate it. So thank you. Want to remind you, next week we're going to begin. You got one more week if you want to join in this study, the Book of Signs by David Jeremiah. Great book. You can order the book. Order the workbook. If you don't I hope you'll get the book and read through it with us. Order the workbook. This is what we're going to be using. The workbook. Each week, we're going to go through it a little bit, and it's just going to be a Bible study.
I was telling people they just needed the study guide. They didn't have to get the book.
Yeah, you don't have to get the book. It helps, but get the study guide.
And the link to order, you can use this link. I don't know if anybody else has it, but it's Amazon, right, Mandy? Is on your Facebook page, right? Or on this page?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to get in that this week and this next week at this time, and we're looking forward to it. I was one of the first things that Dr. Jeremiah says in the book he mentions is the fact that there are over 1,800 prophecies that God put in the Bible regarding Jesus' first and second comings. And then he said, obviously, prophecy is really important to God. And, one thing that's amazed me, so many people, and that's part of what this is about, so many people are interested and want to know and what in relation to prophecy and what's happening in the world today. I wish that we could hear it from every pulpit, that we talking about it, so to strengthen our faith and encourage us in light of the future, that God's plan is working and everything is fitting in God's plan and nothing is like out of control. So we're going to talk about that a lot, and I was, just let me give you just one thought. In the Scripture, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where it describes the Antichrist being revealed, what does it say right before the man of sin is revealed? It says there's going to be a falling away. Well, that falling away, when you study it out, it's a rebellion. And it's eerie, the rebellion we're seeing in the world right now, like no other time. There is a rebellion. There's so many things that are leading us up to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, we'll talk about that a little more next week. So something to think about. I hope you'll join with us. I think you will enjoy it. Now, one devotional thought to leave you with tonight, I'd like to just kind of lay on your heart. Last week, I asked you to consider and read Psalm chapter 61. That's a psalm that God has really brought me to in our journey as we've journeyed into the valley of cancer and the road of cancer. That it's very difficult, but God kind of has given me this psalm. And I began, just mentioned a few things about it last week because I related a lot to David in this. And it's something else I want to share with you. If you remember last week, Psalm 61, it's a psalm where David, he describes his situation. In verse number 2, he says, from the ends of the earth. And what he means by that is like saying, I feel like I'm out in the middle of nowhere right now. And I don't see a way out. It's like I'm lost and I don't have I don't know what to do. And then he goes on to say in verse number 2, when my heart is overwhelmed. And that's the feeling he was having, a feeling of being so overwhelmed, being out in the middle of nowhere. I don't see a way out. What's going on? I don't get it. How is all this happening? And it seems so many people, and it seems that's kind of how the world is right now almost. It's like we're overwhelmed with this COVID-19 thing. It's like, where are we going? How are we? Now, this week, I want to point you to really the rest of the psalm, but specifically verse number 1, the way the psalm begins. He states, his words are, hear my cry, O God, attend to my prayer. Now, his first words, that was his first words. Before verse number 2, where he describes his condition, he describes his state. Before he states it all, the first person he talks to and about it with is God. Now think about that. David knew at that moment he wasn't thinking real clearly, but he also knew who would be thinking clearly. And he went to the one that he knew was thinking clearly. And the rest of the psalm bears out how that was a game changer. The rest of the psalm shows how his attitude changed, his outlook, how it affected his emotions. All of it reflect that in the midst of confusion, David in the psalm had confidence. In verse number 3, he says, God, here I am out in the middle of nowhere, but you are my shelter. You are my refuge. He says, verse number 3, you're my strong tower. That's a place that's impenetrable to the enemy. In verse number 4, he says, I trust you. Verse number 6, he says, you will prolong my life. And in verse number 8, he mentions his praise and singing, that he hasn't lost his song. Does anyone come to your mind right now? Someone who you could look at right now, since this COVID thing mess has started and all the confusion and churches not being able to meet and everything being shut down. Does anyone come to your mind in all of this, their relationship with God has grown? It seemed to have gotten stronger. Their service for the Lord has continued. Can you think of anyone? Would someone think of you? There's David's spiritual life in this confusion hadn't been negatively impacted. Rather, it was thriving. And what this shows is when someone, in the midst of very challenging circumstances, they're spending quality time with God, and they haven't lost their faith, and they haven't lost their song. The first person that came to my mind, thinking about that, was my wife. I've been amazed at how in the midst of everything that she's experiencing, and I've walked through this with her and watched her and observed her over the last couple of years, how she has, through all of this, it hasn't negatively in any way impacted, but rather her relationship with God has grown. And it's thriving. And I've talked to her about it, and she's continuing continually mentions going to the Lord. I go to the Lord. So I've asked her if she would, for just a moment, share with us, share with you how doing that has influenced her life. By the fact that she made it a priority, hear my cry, O Lord, attend to my prayer in the midst of the mess that she's had to deal with. Would you talk to that?
Yes, and I'm trying to kind of gather my thoughts a little bit about that, because I don't, like you said, that somebody whose relationship with God seemed to grow through this. I don't know that I look at myself like that, like I've just grown so much in the Lord. All I know is that Max Woodfin Sr. used to say to me, when he was always close by whenever we would be with somebody that had just lost someone. Max was always there and always a support as well. And he would always say to me that he was always amazed at the grace that God gave for the moment. In other words, he would say, you don't get dying grace until you're dying, until that moment that you need it. You don't get whatever kind of grace, grieving grace, whatever, until the moment that you need it. So that's why we all think, oh, I'm amazed at that, because I don't think I could be that way when, if that happened to me or such. And that really has come back to my mind many times, because through this, even through the giving me my news, my diagnoses, because of COVID, I had to be in the room alone with the doctor. John didn't get to be in there with me when they told me they found a tumor and that it was cancerous. And then when I went to the oncologist, and my son went in with me, and they did let him. And you have to know my son to know that he was going in no matter what. So they decided they let one person come in with me, and he was the one that we decided would, because he's in the medical field and he could maybe understand things I couldn't and explain them to me better or such. So he was in there with me when the first time with the oncologist, and the oncologist looked at us and said, Stephen, I asked him and he wouldn't give me a straight answer, and Stephen then told him, she's wanting straight out you to tell her, what does this mean? And he said, well, it means that if you don't have any treatment, 3 to 6 months you might have. And if you do have treatment, maybe 12 months to maybe 18 months. And that's what he told us in that moment. And that's one of the moments where it came to my mind what Max said, because both when I was with the doctor that first found the tumor and the cancer, and then when I was with the oncologist, there was not a I don't know, what would you call it, a breaking down, a hysteria. In fact, the oncologist said to me, I'm not really used to this, because I usually have breaking down, a little bit of hysteria, a little bit of sobbing, or and I turned at that moment, and up to that point it just didn't even hit me that way. I took in the news and was like, okay, so we got to do what we've got to do. But I turned to look at my son, because he was sitting like this, and I turned to look at him, and I'll tell you, through this whole thing, that was probably the hardest moment I've ever had, is to see the look. Whew. Okay, I'm going to try to say it without. On my son. And I thought, well, you dummy, you shouldn't have brought your child in here to get this news. and but it was too late then. But even that, later I was at an appointment with Lori Savini. If any of you know Lori, you know how great she is. And she's also in the medical field, and I told her about that moment and how hard that was. And she, being in the medical field, also said to me, you know, that too was God's grace and all in his hands, because she said that moment was meant for your son, and now he's going to take that and be so much better of a medical provider himself, because that will color every way he deals with any patient from here on out. And I know she was absolutely right about that. So you know, God just has shown me that he's there in every moment, even in those kind of moments where I look at it negatively. But I have to say, I haven't had the negative thoughts like that, like looking at it like, woe is me, or why me, or things like that. And I know that truly is a result of your prayers as well, and God's grace for dealing with this moment. But in saying that, that is not to say that there are not moments that I know that the stupid devil isn't coming against us and trying to weigh us down with his thoughts that he puts in our heads and his negativity, and trying to send me into depression. Every time I go back and talk to the doctor, the nurses and everybody is always saying, okay, do you feel depressed at all? Do you feel, you know, this way, that way? And I don't. And I say, no, I don't. And that is another thing that they're like, well, you know, you need to expect that, because that's one of the side effects of chemo. And so it's probably going to happen. And they keep telling me that. And I tell them, you know what? I get that. I get that that could happen. But what I know is that when I'm sitting in this house or in my bed or wherever, and I feel that oppression coming on from the stupid devil, that I know what's the only thing that can combat that. John and I, through all this quarantining, and my nose is still running. You all see that I still have to deal with the allergies. I asked them, I said, can chemo not kill allergies if it can kill cancer? I'm hoping for that. But anyway, because of the COVID and all of that and the sheltering, we were put on even a stricter lockdown where even my children and my grandchildren couldn't come to the house. So it was just John and I. And, of course, he gets to go out and be with people and such with work and everything. But as far as being in the house, it was just me and him. So, I did tell him at one point, you need to learn some show tunes or something, because this is, I need a little bit more entertainment. But anyway, that is the time that I think that the devil tries to make you feel so alone, and make you feel like, that you're dealing with this all by yourself. And that is when you entertain that thought even a little bit, it just cracks that door open a little bit and he tries to get in even deeper. And what I have found is that the only thing that changes that for me, besides a grandkid showing up, that always puts me up here, is and my children too, Mandy, don't think of it, but all you grandparents, you understand what I'm saying there, or my great grandchild. But I will either turn on my audio Bible, which if you don't listen to the Bible on audio, you don't know what you're missing. You cannot believe how much more you get in a short amount of time as opposed to reading it. And with my eyesight thing right now, it's very difficult to read it. So I listen to it on audio, and it is awesome. So I will turn it on, and you can do things while you're listening. I can do the dishes or get ready for the day or whatever, do laundry, and still listen. And then another thing that I do is I'll turn on my music. Music is such a huge thing that is so inspiring, and so that's another way I reach for God is through music, through the audio Bible, and then of course through just talking to Him, just prayer, just talking to Him. And He is teaching me so much through this. Much to John's chagrin, he gets my sermons from what I learn, and then I lay them on him, and like, you need to hear this. So he's probably thinking, yeah, you can't wait till we can have more people here too, so that I don't have to be the only one that gets this. But anyway, when he's talking about David cried out to God, such a small statement, it's such a huge life-changing thing. There's so many ways to cry out to God. And I can't express how much that one thing that can be done in different ways changes your whole outlook, your very being. And even though I'm not saying to God, I just feel, why me, or whatever, questioning Him about it, even though I'm not doing that, I do immediately know the change that He does, that He just, makes the Holy Spirit just feel from head to toe and totally changes my attitude, my feeling, my joy. The joy of the Lord is our strength, and that's what Satan tries to steal from us, and he returns that joy. What was that song you used to sing in the youth group all the time? That ha 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 ha. He fills my heart with gladness. Ha 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 ha. And all you youth groupers from our past, Marianne, Myra, all of you will know what I'm talking about there. And we used to end up cracking up over the way you guys sang that song. And that comes to mind. And it gives me strength to keep going. And that's where that grace and that strength comes from, that Max Woodfin always used to talk about, is from the Lord. So I want to say to you, please, if you don't let the devil get you to the point where you're entertaining all those thoughts he's bringing. Combat it, fight it with these tools that the Lord has given us, which is all wrapped up in Him. I don't know if that was a really long answer for, I don't even know if I answered his question right.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You did. Thank you very much. I'm going to conclude with just give you something to think about. David said in verse number 2 of Psalm 61, he said, "Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." Can I suggest to you that one of our primary roles in the situation in the world we're in right now, with all the confusion and all the chaos and all the uncertainty, is leading people or pointing people to the rock of our salvation? Everybody says, listen to the experts. Well, I know one expert that's never wrong, never has been, and never will be, and that's Jehovah God. It's my Savior. Lead people to the rock. Point people to Jesus. In the midst of this, point them to higher ground. Point them to the Lord. You may not be able to, maybe, a lot of people, but every one of us can someone. And maybe God has placed someone around you right now, and maybe in your mind you're sick and tired of all those, they go on and on and on and on. Why don't you, maybe God has them there for a reason, and they're around you or you're around them so that you can point them to Jesus. It may be a fellow Christian that needs to hear the words of faith and confidence from someone like you that hasn't lost your song. Like David in verse number 8 reminded us. Or maybe like David did in verse number 4 of Psalm 61, to remind people that God is still trustworthy. You can trust him in this, that he is still there. Or maybe to remind them, as David did in verse number 7, that he is a God of mercy and a God of truth. I'm just saying, why can't we be dispensers of encouragement in the face of the present uncertain circumstances? Every time I go now, I'm washing my hands more than I ever have. I'm listening, and it's amazing to me how now I'm constantly washing my hands. But every time I go to that dispenser, I think, you know something, that reminds me of what I need to be doing when people come to me in the times of uncertainty that they're living in, or maybe the tribulation, that I need to be a dispenser of encouragement. There's been so many people, and so many are listening to me right now. You've been that for me. I've run into people all week, everywhere I went. At work, I went to Walmart and ran into someone that said, "Hey, I'm watching." And they've just been so encouraging. You know, the media they're constantly describing the condition of this world and how all the awful stuff, and it is awful. Boy, I thank God for the people that remind me about the character of my God. When I bring up COVID, or I bring up the economy, or I bring up all that's going on, I just want to encourage you, just a thought. Point someone to Jesus in the midst of this. Once they open the door, they open the door for you to be able to do that. Another thing is, as we started off with, maybe you're dealing with things. I want to encourage you to take it to the Lord. Hear my cry, O God. Attend to my prayer. Maybe there's something right now that the best thing to do when we finish and we're about to say amen and go is, why don't you take that to the Lord? Don't take it to anybody else right now. Just take it to the Lord. Take it to him. Cast your burden upon the Lord. There's a song we used to sing years ago. Leave it there. Leave it there. Take your burden to the Lord and leave it there. And maybe that's something that you need to do right now. Anyway, that's a great psalm, and thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this. So many of you have told us that you're watching, and you've said so many things. You've sent us emails, posts, texts, call. All you've done is just want to thank you for that. We love you so much, and you know, I thought of all the years God has in my life right now. So many men that I pastor that are reaching out to me and are making it a point to encourage me and just to let me know they're with me in this. I just want to thank you guys. It really helps because I struggle, and I've been a pastor and a preacher, but I struggle in my faith at times like this and wonder why. But you're helping, and I want to thank you for that, and I want to do that for others myself also. So anyway, hope you'll be back next week, and we'll get into our study next week, and we look forward to it. So thank you. Thanks for watching. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.